Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into Garden of Doom, and this week we are pleased to be joined by Valerie Willis. She is an award-winning fantasy paranormal romance author, and she's the co-founder of Four Horsemen Publications Incorporated, which is a fantastic name for a publication, so I'm already biased in her favor. Valerie, thanks very much for coming into Garden of Doom.
Thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited to be here. And yeah, no, the Four Horsemen aspect, you can think my CEO, that was her vision for the name. She's like, what do we call the publishing house? And I'm like, did you have something in mind? She goes, yeah, I kind of already registered it. So, and it's totally been a crazy journey going from a position of being the author, or even, and of course my day job being a typesetter, the person who creates the book for authors, to being a standing on the publisher's point of view. So it's been an incredible journey that my life's been filled with books since the very beginning.
Excellent. Well, I know that when we met CyberWise, in other words, I get the list from podcasts.com or whatever it is, and I fill out my little form, and based on what you've said, I'm like, oh cool, she writes about cryptids, so that's terrific. So I'm really interested in all of that, and so I don't know, why don't you just tell the folks a little bit about yourself, but I do need to know, you said your CEO picked Four Horsemen. Are there four of you that co-founded this thing? Are there four of you?
Technically there was.
Okay.
There's me and her, and then our lead editor, J.M. Paquette, who's also an author who likes writing about vampires and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Fourth Horseman is pretty much, believe it's John, I think it stands for Jonathan, who is our IT, quiet behind the scenes internal guy. No one ever sees him, but he's there someplace.
Okay, so it's not like, famine ran off or something like that.
No. Though I'm pretty sure I am the Horse of Conquest or Pestilence, depending which lore you're looking at.
It's fine by me. It's all.
But just don't go away. No one can get rid of me.
Well, that's what corporations is about. You go close corporation. It's like you're married, but with lots of spouses. So that's
exactly.
Anyway, off of my little digression. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got from whence to here.
Let's see. Little Valerie was really into storytelling. I actually had a speech impediment. I was tongue-tied, and it really didn't get identified herself until way late into first grade, second grade. So my first language has always been writing. Like, I picked up on writing really fast because that was a more reliable means of communicating. By fifth grade, I'm writing in composition books and filling them with stories and aspirations of girls being lost in Africa and things like that, and these long fantasy hero's journey to style things, because I fell in love with the fantasy genre at that point. Fast forward, life hit hard. I shelved my high school writings and novels. In fact, just to express how impactful my writing was in high school level, I just had my 20-year high school reunion, and every single person, people I don't remember, forgive me, people, I love you, it took a hot minute, talking about me having binders of these stories being passed around, and they all remembered, and they're like, did you ever finish it? Or is that what Cedric was? Is that what, and talking about the books that they see, Tattooed Angels, Rebirth, Cedric the Demonic Knight, I was writing the precursors of those all the way back in high school. So to hear that these people who haven't seen me in 20 years still remember my stories is pretty incredible. But one of the things that they also remembered about my writing, and what a lot of readers discover even today, is I have this need to put the dark history, the cryptids, the monsters, the creatures into it. And those who are very well versed in these things are like, whoa, I can't believe you went into that great of detail or that accuracy with those things. But at the same point, I'm not afraid to get silly with it, because I also write under the pseudonym of Honey Cummings.
Wow.
And much like the name implies, it's erotica. And with titles like Sleeping with Sasquatch and Cuddling with Chupacabra. I mean, it's just funny aspects, but the
Hold on a second there. So you actually have some Bigfoot erotica.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I don't know if you know who he is. I don't know if anybody listening to the show knows who he is, but there's a guy named Jonah Goldberg. He worked for National Review. He's now with The Dispatch. He was on Fox News as a panelist. He's now on CNN as a panelist. Anyway, one of his running gags, or maybe it's not a gag, is Bigfoot erotica. And
it's a thing.
It's apparently.
You can search it on Amazon. There's a whole side of it.
I believe you. I don't think I will search it, but I think this is great. This is, Jonah, if you're listening, you know that I think that you're what I should have been if I did better with life. So that's that. Okay, so Bigfoot erotica confirmed.
Dinosaur erotica on there.
Dinosaur?
That's a whole taken by the T-Rex. Yes.
Okay. Listen, I know about vampires and werewolves and witches, obviously, and those typical suspects and that. But the Bigfoot erotica, I know some people may say Sasquatch and Bigfoot not the same thing. Yeah, I'm not going to argue about speciation. It's close enough for government work. So all right, so go on. So you have the sassy and comedic at times cryptids in love.
Right. Like, it's always what I decided to do, and they're shorter stories because erotica is sort of new ground for me as a writer. Yes, I've written romance, fantasy, and paranormal romance, but there's a lot of action, adventure kind of type stuff that's in the front of the story, and romance is sort of like the bonus material in the back seat that you get to visit every now and again, right?
Right. This isn't porn. It's not just the UPS man comes to the door and all of a sudden it's on. I mean, there's got to be some swashbuckling, some adventure. There's got to be some journey for these folks to fall into it.
Right. And so, when some
like Beauty and the Beast,
right. So they were like, Val, you should totally do erotica. You could totally do erotica. And I'm like, and they're like, and you should do like this, do something similar or do something with cryptids you know so much about. And I'm like, all right, but I've got to do humorous erotica because there's no way I can keep like a straight face while writing this because this is a bit much, right? And that's what I went with. And the formula I developed for how I wanted to portray these is that I'm still gun shy. I couldn't go all in that he's always Bigfoot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I applied that whole world of shifters. So he transitions into Bigfoot, you know, almost like a werewolf kind of aspect, which is sort of fun because then you can create a lot of hijinks behind it.
Sure.
The other thing is that usually both the cryptid and the person or the human they're hooking up with, or just the human, are jilted lovers. Like, it starts usually in the first chapter is them catching their date or whoever in the act of cheating on them, or something along the sorts, right? Or declaring that there's a messy divorce at the beginning of killing Chucacabra, and then you find out that she's stuck in her hometown and she hates it, and then the sheriff shows up and it's the bull rider, the ex-bull rider that she was so smitten with before she left, right? But what she doesn't know is he's actually the chupacabra, and it works well for him being a bull rider because he gets to eat. It's a buffet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the bull picks much better for him because he's the predator,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
So I play with all these little fun aspects of it. But no, it's been a crazy journey, and it's awesome seeing the fans' reactions to stuff and readers' reactions to it. They laugh. Sometimes they buy it for friends as gag gifts. I think one of my favorite fallout moments is I'm at Spooky Empire here in Orlando, and I'm sitting at a friend's booth. She made room for me. She's like, "Yeah, set up shop. You know, help me run the table." And a group of friends are coming by, and they stop because the one in the back goes, "Dude, isn't that the book in your bathroom?" And it's Sleeping with Sasquatch. He goes, "Yeah, this is the lady. This is the author." And there's 6 or 8 of them, and they're like, "Oh my god, these are the books in your bathroom." And I'm like, "Is that where you keep my stuff, where everyone gets to see it?"
Listen,
I'm like, "Thank you," because it seems to.
Don't question it. Just be happy. Someone bought it. You know.
And the guy who they're like, your bathroom, he turns to his friends. He's like, "No, you can buy your own damn copies."
Well, that's right. I mean, there's no follow-up questions that you want to know the answer to in that conversation. Just, do you want an autograph? Can I get you to pre-order these? That's sort of where the getting to know you ends. All right.
So that was a lot of fun. And of course, then his significant other goes, "Oh my god, she's the Jersey Devil. We need to get this for my aunt." So, but no, cryptids have impacted my storytelling in a way I never imagined.
Right.
It's gotten me on some pretty crazy panels. I sometimes feel like a fish out of water, because I'll be put on a panel with Mark Muncy from Erie, Florida. I think one time I was supposed to be on the panel with Stacy Brown, who's the leading Bigfoot expert in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and then there's me, the humorous erotica writer was Sleeping with Sasquatch. And I'm like, and of course, Mark Muncy and I know each other from crossing paths elsewhere, things like that, and live in this similar area. And he's like, no, you totally belong on this panel. You know so much about cryptids. It's crazy. But it's been a fun time though. And I've gotten to geek out about the Rougarou, which is another favorite one.
I know the Rougarou from New Orleans.
Yeah, from New Orleans. And there's so many variants within that small little area that it's incredible. But it's one of those that is unique because it's not necessarily a cryptid, but more so of a curse, depending which variation you're looking at, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at me wrong, you're going to be a Rougarou, and but it's a lot of fun trying to chase back those roots, try to see where it connects at. That's something I do in this Cedric series quite a bit.
Well, who's Cedric?
I like to.
Who's Cedric?
So Cedric is my main character in this Cedric series. So he's based off the Russian night hero tales, but he's also derived a lot from Slavic and Romanian superstitions and those earlier tales of vampires and things like that, with a lot of Incubus type lore tied into it.
Nice.
And it was very hard researching because it's interesting how many times I would pull up information. They would list their resources, right? And I would go to the list of resources, and some of the stuff they implied that they got from the resource I couldn't find. And then I would discover this other aspect, and it keeps rolling. So Cedric is sort of a mash-up of some of the older tales of vampires in that whole Germanic and Slavic and Romanian kind of area, where a lot of the superstitions were very unique and very precise about the rules and regulations. So they were vampires or witches, depending on the variation and location with the striga. And if two striga found their souls again, or fell in love, or found their humanity again, depending on the tale, that they would be rewarded on some way of having a child, but the child would be a cursed child, right? Mm-hmm. They described them, interestingly enough, as always being female with limited stamina, with red hair and green eyes.
Limited stamina, though.
Yeah. They were, what was it? They will ride their husbands to death and bear no children. Was one statement in short, right? And it's interesting because when I came across that, I have a friend who's naturally red-haired and green-eyed, and she had just told me when I came across this research that she didn't know that her statistic of being infertile was super high because that aligned to the same genes.
Oh, okay.
So it's so wild to discover this 12th century and older warning and tale, but there's some sort of strange truth to it, right?
Right.
Like, they had somehow as far back as then to know that those traits warranted the inability to reproduce or carry on your family name and to be worn and to stay away. Which, unfortunately, during the Dark Ages, like, that's all you could hope for is your legacy keeps going.
Right, and then those women ended up single and shunned, and then they became the witches as well, because they were...
Witches, right.
They were the old ladies in the forest. They became Baba Yaga.
Yes.
All right, so Cedric is the main character, but he's... a vampire, striga, umpi, or dan, so whatever the term is in whichever village it is, but vampiric. So he is the cryptid. So I imagine that in his journeys, he probably, has human women that fall in love with him, maybe occasionally non-human women, and probably there's lots of other non-human entities. So I don't, I can't ask your process on how you go about deciding which creature necessarily, but if it fits in, we can do it. But like, what are some of the most remote creatures you've dealt with, and how did you go about researching them? And then, tell us some of the detail about them so that we know what your readers are talking about.
Yes. So one of my goals, and frustrations as a reader, right, is like, I love Neil Gaiman. Because a lot of the creatures and lore and aspects and characteristics, like even the Sandman, I was just trying to explain it to someone else that he's actually from Greek mythology. This is, tied to other mythologies with Morpheus and things like that, right? And they're like, no, it's totally unique. And I'm like, no, like Neil Gaiman pulls from very old, ancient Greek, like this is, oracles are still the only ones writing this down kind of vibe.
Right.
And that sort of inspired what I wanted to do, because one of my other favorite authors was James Clavell, and his historical fiction, like for it to be fictional cast of characters, but everything happening around them and to them being very accurate of what happened during that time period just blew me away as a reader. So I sort of took those things that I loved and was like, well, what would that look like for me? And I decided, I'm like, you know what? I love medieval bestiaries. There's such weird stuff in there. And there's all these weird superstitions and little folklores and folk tales and before they were Christianized that have these really bizarre intricates and guidelines and things like that. I wonder how much I could dig into those. Like, let's bring to the surface things that have been forgotten that once were, during the time period they were around, right? Very popular. So we're familiar with the Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur, and even the Canterbury Tales a little bit, depending on which schools of thoughts you run with. But during the medieval ages, the Dark Ages, it was the Russian knight hero tales. That was the stories they were swapping. So when I designed Cedric as a character, I said, okay, I want to revive and sort of slide under the radar, retelling a little bit of one of those knights' tales. So it's Ilya Muromets that I've inspired. He was described to have red hair, right? He had ties to Vladimir the Great. So I make sure that Cedric has that implication. He was known to ride a fearsome black steer with long flowing locks. So I give him a steed that matches with the same name, Barushka, right? Mm-hmm. And try to instill and retell those tales under the volume on low, so you don't know you're relearning these tales. And it's so fun to see how many of my readers will react to my newsletters or reviews and say, I remember my grandmother telling me these tales, right, or things like that. So one of the things I try to do is I blend multiple spans and kind of condense and stitch them together where they make a lot of sense. So now you have Cedric, who has the Striga lores and superstitions. He's got a little bit of Celtic dark magic tied into him as well, with the Morrigan and Battle Goddess Bab and Maine and the Trinity, Daughters of the Trinity kind of a vibe of old pre-Celtic stuff.
So it's sort of like Blade meets The Witcher?
Yeah.
Cool.
Very much so. Very much so. So it's a lot of fun. Like, he hates himself. He's not pleasant. And I decided, strangely, to start the story where he first meets the love of his life. And I started with Cedric's story, even though Roma Santa, the second book, sort of predates and overlaps it a little bit. But that's because I wanted to introduce my readers to the concept of how I'm telling the story through the eyes of his love interest, Angeline, because this world is new to her. Right. And it's interesting because I took a big risk as a writer, because they always tell you, be very careful. If you're going to make an anti-hero kind of tale or damsel in distress, you can turn your readers away very fast. With what is popular nowadays, but I went with it and softened the blow where I could, to humanize them as fast as possible, but also acknowledge the time period I had placed them. They're dealing with the Dark Ages. She has no rights. She's just a thing and a possession, and she goes from being possessed by her uncle to now being possessed as being married off to Cedric. And of course, he wants to be married to her because she saw him kill and feed on a werewolf the night before, as he's trying to hunt down this entity called Roma Santa. As they start to travel, he's using her. He's like, what can I do with this human? Oh, you know what? I'll use her as bait. Like, everything I eat comes after people. So maybe this will work out until she gets killed, right?
She's the scapegoat.
Right. Right, exactly. They wanted him to be married because he's a lord of the land, and he's like, there, problem solved, leave me alone about this topic, let me move on and do what I'm actually doing besides pretending to be human. And one of the first creatures I make them face is a orm. ORM is how it's listed in a lot of, and it's interesting because they were listed in several obituaries. They were drawn in several different ways, but they all had something in common, and that was they were to blame, and a warning to merchants, traveling merchants, that beware of the orm because they will change the landscape. Whether this was the creature that they blame for like landslides all of a sudden and things like that is what it sounds like, right? Beware that the path you took 3, 4, 5 years ago might be gone or might shift while you're traveling on it, right? That's what the impression or assumption I can only make about.
So it's not like pestilence. It's not like locusts. It's actual changing the physical character of the land.
To look like land, It is said to be larger than a cottage or a house, or sometimes larger than a castle, and would gobble you up. Like,
so the creature is larger than a building?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. They are portrayed as massive, like dragon level creatures, and I'm like, why? Where are these? Where are these? This is cool. Could you like? So that scene is them walking, and he's like, "Ooh, I think I found it." He ties the horses up that he got for free from the king because he doesn't care, because he's looking for the perfect steed at this point.
Right.
He's stuck with a human girl, so he drags her way far away from the horses. She's like, "What is he doing? Like, has he never camped before?" Like, she's thinking maybe he's just poses as this tough guy, but he's actually a noble who doesn't know how to live off the land. And you get the impression that she was a farm girl for the first portion of her life, right? And then the horses start panicking, and she's sitting there, and she's like, "Why are the horses freaking out?" Cedric seems like, "Oh, this is what I've been waiting for." And then I describe it as all the trees start to shudder, and the birds are floating around, things are starting to shift, the ground is shaking, the horses are trying to flee, and then the tree he's tied them to lifts up out of the ground, and you realize it's just like a nose horn on this massive creature as it just gobbles up the horses. It's just a fun scene, right? It's not like a fire dragon coming out of a cave or anything like that, but like that's the kind of cool stuff I dug through these obituaries for.
So what's it described as? Aside from huge with a horn on its nose, is it like a giant rhinoceros?
It's described to be the shape of like an earthworm, but made out of like boulders and rocks, or smooth boulders and rocks. Sometimes they're described as brown, sometimes green, sometimes they are the color of sand. Other times they have appendages, so imagine like the whole line of back or one half of an earthworm mimicking the look of a forest on it, with trees and things like that, or sometimes they're just described as completely smooth because they live under all those things.
So it's got camouflage, or it might have
It
might have different coloration. Usually, it matches its environment, but it's it's like a dune, from the movie and the books Dune, a dune-sized worm, but with horns on its head and on its nose, and carnivorous. Well, I think the worms in Dune were carnivorous as well.
Yeah. So, but they don't necessarily describe it with having sharp teeth or anything. I think one description was very adamant that it had rock for teeth or rock for lips, so it's more of a crusher, and it's like, I'm like, that's way gruesome.
Yeah, it's grinding.
It grinds everything down. So I just thought that would be, and of course that was a great thing, right? Everyone's seen Beetlejuice, everyone knows Dune, so this is a medieval creature that's very similar to a concept that we've been introduced to, but at the same time something new to see a knight in shining armor kind of face.
Orm sounds German. Is it Germanic?
I think it is. I think most of the obituaries I managed to get my hands on were very Germanic in nature, and that sort of gave me the reason to lean that, like, the king that he's dealing with is King Frederick I, which is also known as the first king of Germans. Mm-hmm. So I kind of leaned into that. Also, a lot more people know about Grimm fairy tales. Those are also very Germanic in nature. So I wanted to start closer to the pen of familiarity and then slowly pull everyone far away. As I went.
All right, so I'm going to see if this little notion of mine works. We'll call it a game. I'm gonna say a region or a type of people, and you give me an example of a creature that you used. And I'm not going to go crazy. I'm going to use what you said. So give me some Slavic examples.
One of my favorite Slavic superstitions and stuff, and it carried on into the 1800s. Was the fact that werewolves came before vampires.
Of course.
When you look at those older superstitions and stuff, if you were attacked by a wolf or a wolf-like creature and you died before fulfilling, because you mentioned this a minute ago, fulfilling getting married, having kids, managing the family business or farm, you would come back as something undead that feeds on the living. Now, the variations shift whether they physically fed blood and flesh, like a zombie or vampire, or if it was just sucked the souls out of, right? Which is more of a witch or spiritual or evil being kind of vibe. But I always found that fascinating because when you watch a lot of pop culture, the vampire is overlord over the werewolves. So I made sure in my story that I took this Slavic concept that werewolves were supreme, and the werewolf has the ability to overpower the vampire hands down every time.
Okay. So you've got some alpha wolves there.
Yes, for sure. With a lot of Nordic Finner vibes tied into it, and some Greek Apollo and Celtic Apollo meshing kind of vibes.
Well, that's good. I was gonna go to Celtic, but I'm not. I'm just gonna keep going a little bit east. And so, give me something that's very Russian, monster-wise, cryptid-wise.
Russian. Oh, let's see. What is? Besides the fact the Russian Night Hero tales, I try to kind of pull in the idea of the old hags. The old hags were very popular in Russian lore, and they're neither benevolent or malicious. They're just there to pull the strings to make sure that old life dies and new life has a chance to thrive, right? And it's very interesting. And also the sense of that the creatures and the aspects are very seasonal. Russians very specific about, especially the tribes and the rotation of things, that there's a tendency of powerful gods to be all related to each other, much like we see with our Greek and our Celtic and our Nordic, right? But in a different sense. There's usually a lot more marriage aspects happening in the older Russian tribal stuff. But it was really hard to research that stuff because there's really nothing in writing. They're all oral traditions that have survived or were written down thousands of years after the fact, or Christianized by the time they were written down.
Right.
So there's this aspect of really powerful females that basically the Russian aspect is if it's a female and it is a god on any level, beware because they're going to overpower somebody in a hard way or they're going to get you in some way. And so I kind of tie that into all the female arcs that I have introduced throughout the Cedric series.
Who are some of the old Russian and Slavic gods while I've got you? I'm sure that there's some overlap there, similarities.
One of my favorites of all time, and I wrote a short story, and that's in my short story collection called Val's House of Musings, that just came out last month, is Fiery Mary. She was Christianized to be a saint. So there's all these wonderful medieval frescoes of this woman in a red hood with either mostly a black sledgehammer or a hammer beating the devil.
Okay.
And fire everywhere, right? Like she's this powerful image that you will not see on any of the other Christian saints.
No, doesn't sound familiar.
But when you go through the more oral tribal telling, she came out during the dog days of summer. And the story goes is that by, I think it's August 30th, you're not to work the fields until August 3rd or 4th. Because that week is that fire goddess's brother's birthday.
Okay.
And during this week of his birthday, what's supposed to happen is the devil or underworld god, I'm going to try to take the Christianization out of it a little bit to tell it truer to its roots, that the underworld brother and the sky god brother shared a wife.
Huh.
And during the dog days is when they traded their wife. So it's almost like a Hades Persephone kind of tale, right? So you can kind of compare it to that. But the person in charge of mitigating this was Big Sis, who was the fire goddess, right? And it said that if you, during this time of celebration and trade-off, a couple of things were happening, and you had to, one, watch out because Fiery Mary is walking the fields. And if you see a woman in red or a woman holding a sledgehammer, you stay away.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Persephone story because isn't her mother either Artemis or Demeter? Demeter. Yes. And then she sort of negotiate the terms between Zeus and Hades as well for this whole thing?
This story predates ancient Greek.
Oh, I'm not surprised by that at all.
Which I love. Like, I'm like, how old is this compared to what I do now? Oh, you know, it's almost like doing detective work.
Oh yeah, I'm a big proponent of, that the thing started somewhere in the triangle between the Indus Valley, Persia and the steppes, basically Ukrainish, somewhere in that triangle, and that they drifted in different directions from there. And then that's where you sort of get your variations, but it's also partly why you get your similarities. Now, whether there's an older origin for all that, I don't know. I'm not that smart, but yeah, that fits in. So cool. So her name is Fiery Mary.
It's Fiery Mary. Saint Ogina Moraiha, I think I'm probably hashed that so bad. But I can send you links so you can discover it. It's interesting because one of the fun aspects of researching that one is I found people having blog posts or forum posts for talking about their grandmothers still telling these tales, and that many of the small villages in Russia, in the Slavic areas, still practice the rules during that week. So there's no work. You are not to till or work or be outside. You are to celebrate the birthday. No. You're not allowed to knit.
It's festival time.
It is a time of rest and celebration and preparation to St. Elijah is the Christianized brother's name, birthday coming. And what it really is a reflection of, because here in Florida I feel this hard, is that it's too damn hot to be working the fields and harvesting, or you're going to get killed, right? Because they blame it on her. That between how hot it is in the starting of thunderstorms, your Fiery Mary will set your field and house on fire.
Right.
But really, it's a warning of weather, right?
And you party at night, so you sleep during the day and you're not outside.
Okay. Yeah. And then the other interesting thing is there's mentioning of migration of snakes, and apparently gardener snakes and things like that do have a large migration during this time over there. And that you don't want to be mistaken as the devil, because what he is he's hiding away so he doesn't have to give the wife back. So that's when Elijah, or the sky god brother, starts shooting lightning bolts down.
Well, let's use the Russian name. So what's the sky god?
I could find it.
Oh,
I could not find it for the life of me.
I thought it was Voltan, something like it turned I thought it drifted into Wotan that turned into Odin.
I couldn't even find her original name. Both of those are the Christianized aspects.
Oh, okay. So Elijah is the Hades brother, or
no? He would be Zeus.
He would be Zeus.
This aspect.
Okay.
It's as if Zeus and Hades sharing Persephone kind of vibe.
Okay. All right. So I guess we can just stick to the devil then for the bad guy brother, and Elijah for good guy brother, and Fiery Mary for the sort of the I guess the one who rules them all, at least for this segment.
Exactly.
Very cool.
Beware of the sledgehammer.
All right. So then we're going to jump over a whole bunch of countries, a whole bunch of regions. I'm going to go into Celtic.
Celtic. That's not a far stretch. I thought you were going to go Caribbean or South America. I can name all sorts of crazy stuff.
Well, after I'm done, you can just surprise me with places.
So Celtic, I have a lot of fun with. There's a lot of, I mean, come on, it's fairies, right? Mm-hmm. And mischief makers and things like that. But again, the interesting thing is Greek and Celtic have always sort of, in my eyes, been sort of parallel to each other. And the difference is that the ancient Greek had the oracles to record, and the ancient Celtics had their druids to tell the stories orally.
Right.
And they had at least established strong enough roots in that for some more so to survive. Though the crazy thing that kills me about the Celtic side is most of what we know about Celtic culture and practices comes way later and it actually comes from Julius Caesar during the Gaul Wars. So his Gaul Wars journals is about Celtic culture, and that's where we learn it. And then you realize how freaking powerful he was as a general, because he studied and picked apart other cultures before defeating them.
Yeah, the Romans invented the word Picts. I mean, nobody called themselves the Picts. The Romans came up with it. And I mean, also the power is also in that there's a month named July after him, and then his grandson or his son Augustus as well. So,
there was an evil wizard. There's a lot of folklore. I'm probably going to hash it because it kills me every time. I wish I could pronounce all of these beautifully, but I cannot. The Tales of Cuchulainn. There's mentioning of an evil wizard, Calatin. And Calatin, what gets glossed over the most with him is that he had 3 daughters, right? And these 3 daughters were sorceresses. They were very powerful in their own right.
Of course they were.
Sent to face the hero. The hero defeated them in a fair fight. And then when they realized what their father was doing, they basically disowned their father, or their father disowned them because they stood up to him. But they were a trinity, and trinities are a very powerful thing in Celtic and many other languages or religions.
Like every.
And what was interesting is that there was 2 different variations of one sister, and then the other sister often gets absorbed by the other 2 get absorbed by the one.
Like Voltron.
So the most common one we know is Morrigan, and she's had many variations throughout time. But she was sort of described as the one who was into the dark arts. That was her specialty. She mingled in shadowy arts of magic. Then you had Bab. Bab is actually the shapeshifter. That's where you're shifting into a raven and similar aspects, along with battle. Like, she's obsessed with battle magic, which doesn't get brought up as often in mythology as you think it would. But the fact that her specialty was very on the battlefield, she is who shows up or picks a side, and the side she picks is who wins, is a very intense and very Viking Nordic aspect.
Also Athena.
It almost can be said that this older tale might have inspired what we know as Valkyrie lore and things like that, right? And then the 3rd sister is the one that often, I think she got reinvented in Arthurian folklore in a different way, but she was sort of like venoms and snakes and wild creatures and things like that kind of aspect. And these 3 sisters, were punished to lose an eye at one point, to show that they no longer held allegiance with their father. And there were so many weird little stories about them, and I could never find like a full collection of just about them. So I had to piece together a bunch of stuff everywhere to kind of rebuild and then decide how I wanted to stitch them into other similar mythologies that seemed to resonate with them, to rebuild them and bring them back into the forefront of readers' minds. Like, these are entities. I know at one point early on when I first published, someone's like, well, this is not how you spell Morrigan, and this is not what the moon goddess is about. And I'm like, well, she's not my moon goddess in my series. She is never referred to as a moon goddess. And it's a fictional piece of work, and I can call Morrigan and spell it however I see fit.
Right.
Right. This is a fictional tale loosely inspired by these things. But at the same front, I always encourage my readers, like, go research these things, like the names and some of the things that I'm doing, because you'll be pleasantly surprised that there's some sort of connection to the real world to them. So that would probably be like one of the significant physical gods and people in pre-Celtic kind of aspect that I adore and feel like there's such fun characters to play with. So you get to experience all 3 sisters constantly throughout the Cedric series.
All right. How about some monster let's go with the sea peoples, and we'll be liberal. We can go Anatolian, we can go Phoenician, we can go Minoan, whatever, North African, whatever, Canaanite, the Israelite before they were Jews,
There's an interesting fertility goddess. I can't quite remember her name, but Lilith, my character Lilith runs into her in Artemis. And in King Incubus, in book 4 and 5, she's helping run sort of like the underworld or Feyworld's version of like a brothel whorehouse, right?
Okay.
And she's the hostess. Because she's not only associated with fertility, but with fruits, right? The whole aspect of bearing fruit, it was one of the few that they didn't tie spring to her, which is a very common virgin aspect of fertility goddesses and things like that you see commonly in Greek and Roman mythology, pantheons and things like that.
Is it Ishtar or Inanna?
I think it's Inanna.
Okay.
And then there was another one that I used that was very similar. So I
Astarte.
kind of like had them grouped together in this building, and they got excited because Lilith is sort of the outcast, the black sheep among these types of deities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, "Oh, hey guys,"
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it was kind of fun to kind of highlight them in some sort of passing and let them have a chance to have a voice. And to kind of reveal or be portrayed with a lot of the aspects that make them stand out. I do that a lot. Like I see just a snippet. I may not be able to make them a main character just yet, or would hope to in the future. But I even use in King Incubus, he's trying to go. The other main character is Centoni, which is a character who's coming into power on a quest. They're like, "You've never done a proper quest. We're going to send you on a quest." And he's like, "I don't know. I'm a bartender. Like,
right.
Don't send me someplace weird." And they send him to a deserted island in the Caribbean, as one does.
Mm-hmm.
But I forget to give him a map.
Mm-hmm.
So he's questing hard.
Right, like Odysseus.
Yes, right. Very inspired with Odysseus. And he runs across this dog that clearly he could tell because of his new powers and stuff that this is not just any dog. This dog is someone or something.
Mm-hmm.
But the dog helps him out, and the dog tale comes from Maori lore, right? That there's this tale of a woman's husband getting cursed or brother being cursed and turned into a dog, and that dog becomes her guardian, and her husband or brother continues to fulfill the role.
Did you say Maori?
Maori.
Where are they from?
From New Zealand kind of aspect.
New Zealand, okay.
Those tribes. Like I said, I will hash these names so bad, and I apologize. It is not intentional.
It's okay. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to be the audience to stop you when you're going too fast because you've got the knowledge in your head, we don't. And
I know.
Yeah.
King Incubus was fun for me though because I really it gave me an excuse to set aside that very Slavic, Germanic, Celtic, and Greek heavy content that I had been visiting quite often in the series. Set it off to the side, and then reach across the globe and like pull in South American and Caribbean and even some Mexican and even New Orleans lore a little bit, right? These, Haitian and everything. And it was so funny because while I was writing that, and my friend whose father is from Cuba, he's like, I was like, "Hey, can you ask your dad if he knows what a ciguapa is?" And he's like, "What?" He's like, "My dad doesn't talk about paranormal stuff." I said, "Just ask him, please. Just, I'm looking at the forums and I'm translating things out of Spanish, where I can, because I love seeing people retelling these tales still." I said, "Just tell me whether or not he knows what you mean." And he calls me, he meets me in a cafe. Like a week later, he goes, "So I asked my dad." And I was like, "Oh, did we need to sit down for coffee for this?" He goes, "Squapa almost got my dad. Some blue lady in the water with long black hair almost got my uncle." And I'm like, "That's a Squapa," these water spirits, that are going to eat people and steal men away.
Like mermaids. The original mermaids are the Sirens, I guess, a little bit.
Right. And it's interesting because a literary friend of mine and I were talking. I was like, she's like, I posted a picture, and she goes, what creature is that? I goes, that's a siren. And she goes, no, sirens are mermaids. I said, no, they're not. They're seabirds that lost the right to fly after they pissed off Hera or somebody of the sorts, depending which story. She goes, no, they're mermaids who sing. I said, no, they're seabirds, women that sing. And we went back and forth for a while. She's like, no, I'm pretty sure. I'm like, just so you know, they go both ways depending on the culture that you're talking about.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of creatures. Yeah.
The hell, and there's seabird, harpy type ones that do the same thing, you know. But she was just getting so frustrated because I was finding more frescoes and medieval paintings and manuscript art than she could on her version versus my version.
Yeah.
She's like, this is insane.
But those paintings are probably all, had to get through the Christian censors, so they were probably more Europeanized, or whatever the right word is.
Exactly. A lot of...
Because the original mermaids, I know, were like more monstrous. They were not beautiful. God, yes. They were like, They
were not.
Yeah,
they were not.
Yeah.
In fact, I talked about mermaids on Eerie Travels podcast. That was one of the first guest episodes I did with them. Because Mark Muncie from Eerie Travels in Erie, Florida, and Erica Lance, who's my business partner at Four Horsemen, were like, who knows about mermaids? Valerie knows about mermaids. I'm like, do you want to know the mythology or actual accounts, like from reputable, things? And
I want the mythology.
Currently in modern mermaid sightings are all happening in Zimbabwe. And we're talking about like a lot of people seeing them. So the Zimbabwe Dam needed repairs or something of the sorts, right? And there's a local village that they hired out of, sent them down. Work was going okay for 3 days, and then they claimed to have seen a female and male mermaid down there that terrified them, that was watching them.
Well, that's weird, because there's a lot of sort of mermen, that are sort of part of the origin creation tale of peoples in Africa. Now, Zimbabwe is in Eastern Africa, and most of these are more Western and Central Africa.
Right.
But stories drift.
Right, and you could find...
Or creatures migrate.
Right, and then the Zimbabwe government made a statement about this that you can find. Which fascinates me. It's kind of exciting, right? Like something that should be sort of like ancient history, mythology or something is still resurfacing, and this is where cryptids are exciting too, right? Like they're still here kind of vibe, or they always will be here, or we still just haven't found them or caught them yet. So they come to find out that this particular village that lives off the lake, that's been there for centuries before the dam and stuff, had a mermaid festival or event where they would throw alcohol into the lake to deter or keep away the mermaid. Mm-hmm. And that hadn't been done because they had given up that tradition. And here they are trying to repair the dam, and these villagers go in, they see, and they said, no, there's mermaids, there's a male and a female, and they keep getting closer and closer, and we're done. So, of course, the company who's hired to repair this dam goes, you know what? We're going to hire people who are not from here and just get this job done. Clearly, they're trying to stall us, whatever the reasons are, or maybe they're just too superstitious and they're mistaking catfish and other fish for this, right?
Sure.
So they hire a bunch of people out of Scotland and Ireland, right? They bring those guys in. 3 days down, those guys, nope, there's mermaids down there. And of course, then if you look at their mermaid is the marrow, right? Who are fish people who eat people and eat souls. The folk tale of Soul Cages is a great example of that, right? So they're like, no, there's definitely mermaids down there. So what ended up happening is the Zimbabwe governor gets involved, and he says, "That's it. We're going to hold the festival. Let's revive this festival in the village.
Let's get this river drunk."
let's throw a bunch of alcohol in
Mm-hmm.
and deter the mermaids, and it solved the problem, right?
There you go.
So whether it was, it could be argued that maybe this is a tourist move, but then again, there's so many eyewitness statements.
I mean, it's a far cry that you have the local Zimbabwean workforce and anyone else who was in that labor force and the Scottish and Irish workforce imported to have conspired together to come up with the same story and to actually see it. And I mean, the people from Scotland and Ireland didn't go 3,000 miles or 6,000 miles.
Opposed to say, I saw a mermaid.
Right, to not get paid for the job. So that I'm convinced. So actually, I changed my mind, but you just gave me the reputable witness attestations. So what is the mythology? What's the origin of a mermaid? Because it's not that easy to find. I remember I looked at it at some point, but clearly I forgot.
It's interesting because it's usually one of two things. It's either something they saw in the ocean that was so human-like they don't know what to label it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not necessarily always beautiful, but it's human-esque enough to unnerve an entire ship of people who may or may not be sick or on scurvy and things like that, right? And then there's the other aspect that through mythology and storytelling, that these are people who have been punished on some level, right? And you see that a lot more so when it comes to mermaid lore, that it's usually either something that's going to gobble you up that mimics people, or this is somebody who has done the gods or pissed off some sort of spirit and has ended up this way. So that would be like the older variants that you're going to find when you really dig and trace roots until they won't go any further down for you. But the strangest aspects is seeing stories and journal entries from people in places where you know they saw something and it's more than one person. One of the interesting ones was there was a ship docked in a Canadian port, and I can't remember, but it's off of the Pacific Ocean, just north of Oregon, right? And they're coming into port, and they're rowing the boat from the big ship to the shore, right? When something hits their boat and is trying to get up and in their boat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be arguable that perhaps this was a seal, because seals are known to do that, and they are common around in the area. But they had to fight it off. And there's reports from several ship logs in the area. The person who was in the little dinghy at the time was very famous at the time and well respected. And he wrote it in his journal, and he wrote letters to people about the incident and to try to figure out what that was. And he could only describe it as a mermaid, but he made it clear that it was clearly like a woman with long hair, but she's like very scarred and almost pale and beat up a little bit. So clearly she's been living in the water, but without a doubt had a tail similar to that, to like a dolphin or porpoise or that sort, or whale or something of the sorts, right?
Yeah, flukes, not fish, but mammalian.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there is a story about a tourist guide and a whole ship of tourists and scuba divers who run into a mermaid. I think it's in the late 90s or early 2000s down in Hawaii, in the Kauai Bay there. And he got a shot of the mermaid from below, so the sunlight's coming through the water and you see a figure. Photoshop wasn't a thing at this point, or not many people would have been skilled enough at Photoshop to really recreate anything. But it's interesting to look at that photo because unlike other photos I've seen, and of course Discovery Channel came out with a mockumentary called Mermaid, so a lot of mermaid footage is all from that show if you watch it. It's not anywhere close to how people portray a mermaid in a way. So it's very interesting to look at that photo and wonder, like, there's no way someone could have been wearing, because a pop culture thing now is everyone wears sort of Wikiwachi style mermaid tails.
Sure.
You know, because I'm Florida. It doesn't look anything like those at all. It doesn't look like legs could have fit into that in a way that would be feasible or anything. So it's a very interesting photo. And I think my favorite mermaid account comes from a man. He comes from Pennsylvania, I think, which is very strange.
It's like the Florida of the North.
It's interesting that it's a river because when you look at Russian and Slavic mermaid and water nymph tales, they're always in the rivers, eating people, stealing people, drowning people. So he spotted this mermaid while fishing one of the rivers, and he was known to be a very Christian man. He never drunk a drop of alcohol. He's always been very clear-headed. So when he said he saw something, I saw it on multiple occasions and just decided to stop fishing there altogether. Chances are, but he said it was a woman and that she would, and that she had a hole in the river under one of the larger boulders. Oh. And it's just, like, I don't know, it's something about that imagery. Like, if you live in Pennsylvania or been to a similar environment, it's like, you can kind of see that. That would be, you would be none the wiser that there's something living there unless it presented itself. So, that's my little fun tangent on mermaids.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
In the Disney movie version of Beauty and the Beast, what the hell is the Beast? He's sort of bull, sort of lion. I mean, what the heck is the Beast?
You talk to the animators, and it is so. As an artist, one of our favorite things to do is mash up animals.
Right, Chimera, all fun. Actually, so that is Chimera is actually an actual creature. It's not. It's become a word to describe an umbrella term, but isn't Chimera like a specific creature with like sort of like a man's face?
Created mashup of animals, in short. Now, each culture has different identification of which animal parts is where, who, what, when, where. But if you go over the general concept of a chimera, it's basically someone who is a magic user or a curse maker has created a creature that shouldn't be, and mashed a bunch of stuff together. Whether or not they have humanistic aspects or not is very rare. In Beast's case, he is a cursed human. He's essentially a rougarou, if you really think about it. But he's a combination art style of a bear, a boar, and a buffalo.
So, yeah, I mean, that's about right. By the way, Chimera, the Chimera, the original one, was, I lost, okay, here it is. Depicted depicted as a lion with the head of a goat protruding from its back and a tail that might end with a snake's head. It was the offspring of Typhon and Echidna, and a sibling of monsters like Cerberus and the Lemaian Hydra. So
now, Typhon also is called Python, and he is said to be the father of monsters, and his significant other was, oh God, what is her name?
Actually, they're not the same, because Zeus had to kill Typhon, and then Apollo had to kill Python to complete the new hero's quest of the sun, but Apollo never got around to usurping his father.
Right. It's weird. So there's like weird technology that muddles the two, though. And it's like, okay, well, which, who, what, when, where? And part of it is that at one point, both the oracles were known to do this, and others, though other people recording those tales, whatever god was more popular got placed in the hero's position.
Gotcha.
So you have to be very careful researching it, because yes, that is the story, or the story that outlasted the others. But it comes down to, you have to kind of go back and be like, were they just telling a story and just plugging in whatever God was going to give them the most gold?
It's like all the different Batman products out there. They're not all the same. Not every Joker's the same. Not every Batman. It's not all one canon. There's different canons.
Delphine was Typhon's, the mother of dragons and monsters. And,
it's always a mother, right? The Lilith is the mother of monsters. The Delphine.
There's a lot. In fact, speaking of beast, so I don't know how well you remember the Disney cartoon aspect, but like an old hag comes to him and is like, "Give me a kiss" or something like that, and he's like, "Ew, gross, no." And then that's what starts.
Right. She's like, "I'll teach you a lesson."
That is Celtic. That is pre-Celtic, in fact. That is based off actually a winter goddess, triune goddess by the name of, they call her the Blue Hag of Winter, or the Queen of Winter. And that is one of the things that she does. Ironically, she did the same thing to King Arthur, and this is in Arthurian tales, and he complied, but and that's why he became such a great knight or something. It was part of the magic behind Arthur.
Arthur was so good.
He was.
For like 4 years.
My favorite Arthurian character of all time is Vivian.
Okay.
And no one seems to know Vivian when I bring it up. They're like, who the hell's Vivian? I said, Vivian is Merlin's mistress, and the reason why Merlin went missing.
Mm-hmm.
She locked him in a tower because over a dinner party, and there's a poem about this that did last the times that is hilarious to read. They're sitting at a dinner, and she's losing her shit because she's trying to get Merlin to confess to the Knights of the Round Table and their significant others that they're a thing, right? And he won't. And it's pissing her off, so she starts insulting just mainly Arthur, who is, Merlin's,
prodigy. His project, everything.
Prodigy. And she's like, and then this guy, are you truly the great knight that you are when you haven't even addressed what Lancelot and your wife did? And like, freaking like, throws the elephant into the room and calls it all out and causes a ruckus. But it is interesting because then there is the Mabinogion, which a lot of people don't know, the Welsh tales of Arthur's knights. And at one point, I think it was Gawain or one of them who got, I can't remember which one got turned into a dwarf, was wandering the forest. Yeah, this happened. And he came across the tower somehow and found Merlin, and Merlin gave him the answer he needed and then sent him on his way. And he's like, "Don't you want to leave?" And he's like, "Nah."
Yeah, kind of like it here. so again, it's our friend Odysseus, on the island with Circe. He's like, "I really want to get back to my wife." 2 years later.
Yeah, 2 years later.
Right.
Exactly.
And a little bit like Cersei Lannister by locking people in towers. So there's something in the name. All right. So the beast from Disney, they just put together their own creature and a darn fine creature they came up with. But
yes.
Yeah, but obviously inspired by lots of things, as most Disney movies and characters are. If not, people say that they are dark. Just read the original Grimm's tales and see dark. But
my favorite one in the Grimm tales is the willful child. That she was so adamant about going against her mother's wishes that she ended up licking the mirror and dying of mercury poisoning. And then even after she was buried, she would still crawl out of her grave.
I was listening to a podcast. I can't even remember what podcast it was. And the person kept saying Snow White. And they were so clearly talking about Sleeping Beauty. And it was driving me crazy. I'm like, that's Sleeping Beauty. It's not Snow White. That's Sleeping Beauty. It's not Snow White. I know that they're all similar. They're all princesses. And they all have, there's some curse or some, someone trying to kill them. But different stories. Different stories. I mean, apparently the Cinderella story goes all the way back, millennia.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy? I tell authors all the time, because I mentor a lot of people. They're like, "Oh, but I feel like this story's been told before." I said, there is not a story that hasn't been told on some level, but you can only tell the version that you want to tell. I said, how many times has the #1 movie or #1 new release on a book been basically a retelling of Cinderella.
True. Yeah. I mean, isn't that pretty much every rom-com? So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you switch the genders around or the situation or whatever it is. But yeah, you're right. They basically are. That's why they call it a Cinderella story. I want to ask you one last thing, and then you can certainly promote whatever you like. But what is, okay, it's two questions because, of course, it's me. I say one and I come up with two. What is your favorite cryptid and why? And what is the one that when you looked into them, you're like, I don't know what the hell this is. I never heard about it before, but I absolutely have to put this into a book.
My favorite all-time cryptid is the pug wedgie. Well, first off, the name is just fun to say. It's an American-based goblin mischief maker. People still to this day see it. There's even a microbrewer who has a pug wedgie beer because he ran into one. Most of the sightings are over there in Jersey in the Bridgewater Triangle. And
So the pudge wedgie is from New Jersey.
Yes.
The pudge wedgie.
He hangs out, and they say in that same area people see like Kelpie-like horses and Sasquatch and Jersey Devil is in a similar area. It's very active there. But these little, but what kills me is that the tales involving the pug wedgie are very like, they're a little unnerving in some ways. Like the guy talks about how he couldn't understand what it was saying at first because it was trying to master language, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what it was trying to say to him is, come with me. And it's almost very similar to those Celtic fairy stories. I've come to the fairy circles, right. Or so-and-so was stolen by the fairies.
Follow me into the forest to the will of the wisp, and then you're never seen again.
Right. So it's got that vibe to it. But it's always like these little gremlin people.
They're bait.
And then there is a story about I think it's 1800s of a Bible salesman, and his wheel breaks and his Bible spill out, and he goes to start, and he sets the wagon down and he turns around, comes around the prongs, right? And there is a pug wedgie helping pick up the Bibles. And it's like, you should come with me. You should come with me. And he's like, no.
So it's basically like an imp gnome kind of thing.
Yeah, and apparently it kept crossing paths, or it would always be there when he would come by later, and eventually he just stopped going.
Well, in the Twilight Zone, that means that he's dead and he just hasn't realized it yet. But
right.
All right. So that's your favorite.
That's that one. There is, God, what were they called? It's a D. So there's these weird goblin chicken things in a lot of Caribbean mythology. They're described chicken-sized.
Aren't those sort of like basilisks? Are they sort of like goblin chickens? Or is that a...
They have a hat.
Uh-huh.
They have hats. They have big hats. They're the size of a chicken. When you lift the hat, all it is a mouthful of teeth.
Oh, great.
And they were known to attack children, specifically.
Of course.
And steal the children. Or, if you were a lone traveler at the wrong time of night, they would often mob you by several of these. It's almost like land piranhas, right?
Yeah.
So when I came across this, I'm like, this is so absurd and so left field. I want to use this. So that's like one of the two first weird creatures that Tony runs into on this Caribbean island. He's like, is that a chicken wearing a hat? And then it flips the hat, and he's like, oh shit, that is not that. This is not friendly.
It's murderous chicken Pac-Man, right?
Right. So, and being able to use like absurd like creatures like that and try to give them purpose again is quite fun. So.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for all that. You're a fount of information here. I think we could probably do this forever and only scratch the surface. Tell the people where they can find your stuff and everything. If you want to be followed and found, how they can follow and find you.
Absolutely. You can hear me talk more about the Cedric series and the mythologies and things like that on my TikTok and YouTube and everything. WillisAuthor.com should link you to everywhere you need to go. You can subscribe to my newsletter, where I also provide newsletters on occasion about the different creatures and the background and who they are. I enjoy, you can find my books, Cedric the Demonic Knight and the Cedric Series, anywhere where books are sold. I also write under Honey Cummings if you want something a little saucier and funnier. And that's Sleeping with Sasquatch and Cuddling with Chupacabra and things like that. But yeah, Willis, WILLIS, author.com, and you should be able to get to me everywhere you prefer to follow.
Okay, perfect. TikTok is also the social media of choice for you?
Yes, I'm having a lot of fun. I recently discovered that you guys actually like listening to me ramble on and geek out about mythology and my stories. So I'm starting to compartmentalize those things. And for December, I'm trying to put together an advent calendar of creatures for every day leading up to Christmas.
Oh, very good. So it's like the 25 days of Christmas instead of the 12 days of Christmas. Monster style, cryptid style.
Monster style.
Yeah, that's right. Monster sized. All right. Well, thank you very much, Valerie Willis, for joining us on the show. It was a lot of fun. And folks, if you want to follow me, you can follow me on X. I'm still on X or Twitter, at IcarusFellMD. Of course, Garden of Doom has a Facebook page, not a group, but a page. But if you message me there, I'll find it eventually. And there are some people who post there periodically as well. And that's fine too, as long as it's related to Garden of Doom, which is pretty much everything, including Bigfoot erotica, but not regular erotica. We want to be a classy page. And aside from that, rate, review, and refer, and of course subscribe. So if you do all those things, I thank you, and thank you once again to our guest, and thank you for listening. And you'll hear us again next week in the Garden of Doom.
Well, I saw the thing coming out of the sky. It had a one long horn and one big eye. I commenced to shaking and I said, ooh, it looks like a purple people eater to me. It was a one-eyed, one-horn flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horn flying purple people eater. A one-eyed, one-horn flying purple people eater sure looks strange to me. One-eyed. Well, he came down to earth and he lit in a tree. I said, Mr. Purple People Eater, don't eat me. I heard him say in a voice so gruff, I wouldn't eat you 'cause you're so tough. It was a one-eyed, one-horn flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horn flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horn flying purple people eater sure looks strange to me. One-horn. I said, Mr. Purple People Eater, what's your line? He said, eating purple people and it sure is fine. But that's not the reason that I came to land. I want to get a job in a rock and roll band. Well, bless my soul, rock and roll, flying purple people eater. Pigeon-toed, undergrowth, flying purple people eater. He wears short shorts. Friendly little people eater. What a sight to see. And then he swung from the tree and he lit on the ground and he started to rock, really rocking around. It was a crazy ditty with a swinging tune. Sing a bop bop a boop a lap a loom bam boom. Well, bless my soul, rock and roll, flying purple people eater. Pigeon-toed, undergrowth, flying purple people eater. I like short shorts, flying purple people eater. What a sight to see. Purple people. Well, he went on his way and then what do you know? I saw him last night on a TV show. He was blowing it out, really knocking him dead, playing rock and roll music through the horn in his head.